work to be efficient with your time. We're streaming, and for those that are watching, you go to route29solutions.org. Under the panel meeting tab, you'll find the agenda and the presentation for today's meeting under the April 30th meeting. But before we get started, just to say hello to the folks that are here, remind you that if you need a restroom, it's out the door to the hall down the right. If for any reason we would have to vacate this building and leave the room, we would go back down the steps, through the front door, turn to the left, and the rallying point for this building is the parking lot down the hill to your left. Hopefully we won't need that. We'll go ahead with our introductions. I'll say initially that Henry is out of town and Karen is not able to join us today, so they will not be here. But Chris, why don't we start with you for the introductions?
Chris Engel, City of Charlottesville.
Brad Sheffield, Elmore County Board of Supervisors.
Satinder Huja, Mayor of Charlottesville.
Morgan Butler, Southern Environmental Law Center.
Chip Oils with the Planning District Commission and MPO. Peter Porches with CMS Properties.
Luke?
Lou Hatter, 29 Solutions Communications Manager.
John Lynch, VDOT Culpeper District.
Linda Collop, VDOT IT Support.
Debbie Messina, Philip Chiquette.
Dave Covington, VDOT Charlottesville Residency.
Allison Thompson, TD.
Joel Nunzia, VDOT Charlottesville Residency.
And Owen, why don't you just introduce yourself?
Owen Peary with RK&K Engineers, and I'm the design manager.
He's a guy we can blame for a lot. Look, try to be very efficient with your time today. Thank you for attending. Appreciate that. Linda, won't you go to the third page? Third, yeah, there.
The third page.
I'm sorry. Back. There you go.
Okay.
From the August 16th meeting, a few more viewers, a few more streams, and a few more minutes per stream, so a little increased attention there. Next one. 2 comments through the website. Still nothing new on route29solutions.org. That all seemed to maybe quiet after the contract was awarded. I'll still remind people that provide input section on route29solutions.org is out there if anybody wants to use it. The 2 comments that came in on the website inbox between the 13th and the 27th. One, we saw this earlier about just expressing an opinion that the signs for the Route 29 construction down on Monroe and Madison Heights are a waste of money, and I think the feeling there is appreciate that position, but VDOT feels that it's important remembering that Route 29 is an arterial through the state to remind folks both north and south of Route 29 that there is construction going on in the Charlottesville, Albemarle area, and those signs will remain, those billboards will remain up and in place. There was another comment that came in that suggested changing the yield sign. We've talked about this condition on Route 250. The yield sign to a stop sign at the Route 250-29 merge. VDOT traffic engineers are going to take a look at this situation with the contractor, but I think it's fair to say it's unlikely that a stop sign would be the answer. And Dave, maybe you can speak to that a little bit more when we get to the project update.
Sure.
Which you'll do from up here. Okay. Is that fair enough?
It is.
Any question about those 2 comments?
Dave, can I talk more about that entrance ramp? That's something I wanted to ask about at some point.
The 29-250?
Yeah.
Yes.
You're going to talk more about it?
Yes.
All right. I'll ask.
Yes. Okay. From feedback and issues that came up on our April 16th meeting, the property owners, the applicable property owners, have been notified of an option to remove signs, to remove their signs at their own cost, and replace them within the easement area, within areas that are okay to replace them. There are some varying deadlines for those of the letters that I saw that went to some property owners. There was a June 1st deadline for some, July 17th for other. I would say that anybody that is one of those property owners, just pay attention to the letter that you got, and I believe the letter does, Dave, give your contact information. I would encourage any property owner who receives one of those letters to contact Dave and just make sure we have all the correct information. There are some things changing with some of the signs that maybe were thought would be necessary to remove, may not be necessary to remove. So I think it's important to just stay, if you're one of those property owners, stay in touch with Dave. Karen asked about the integrated construction schedule. That's the one that had all of the construction projects with sort of, I won't really call it a schedule, but just sort of summary notes about activities taking place during the months through the years. That is being updated. It's not finished yet. We do have the updated schedule from the design build contractor. We'll have that within the next 2 weeks by the next meeting updated. We talked about the Berkmar extension plans and said that Berkmar wasn't really going to do a 30% design submission because of the completeness of the plans that were submitted with the proposal. And I think it might have been Henry that said, well, what about posting the plans that were submitted with the proposal? Those have been posted. That's a link. If you go to route29solutions.org, there's a Learn More tab that takes you to each one of the projects. If you go to the Berkmar project, you'll find the proposal plans there. The same with the RIO GSI right-of-way plans. Those have been posted. If you go to Learn More, RIO Road intersection, you'll see the right-of-way plans posted there, along with the design submissions and the other plans that have been posted for RIO.
Phil, I think at one of our meetings, when we were talking about the Berkmar not having a 30% plan, we talked about maybe having one of our meetings where we focus a bit on the Berkmar plans that have been posted.
Yeah, let's talk about that, about the project update, because Dave's team just reviewed Berkmar today at the contractor's office. So maybe we can do that for next meeting.
Sounds good.
Okay? Any questions about those items? Okay, it's the open discussion period. Any suggestions for future agenda items or any particular item you want to discuss?
No, thank you for having the staked out area in front of our property taken care of. I don't know if the other property owners got the same thing, but that helps to visualize what we're talking about. I'm just going to go as we go. That's
Okay, sure. Chip?
I think the only thing, just back to one of the earlier comments about the signs up in Madison or somewhere else going to DC. Being new to the area, not arguing, I think it's a good use up there. I think you have to be really familiar with the project and the intersection being discussed of where it is. Not being familiar with the area, I might not would know where 29 and 250 were, because I don't think it says anything about Charlottesville or it starts to put it into a location. That might be something that would make it a little bit more noticeable to people passing it that aren't as familiar with that intersection.
Lou, can you discuss that with the? Okay.
I mean, it's the standard logo, but it really doesn't say Charlottesville or anything like that. So if I'm not that familiar with Charlottesville, it's not meaning a lot, even though I may be traveling there.
We have discussed a little bit of this. The first thing is Charlottesville. It doesn't say Charlottesville. There's kind of a reason, because we don't want to scare people away from Charlottesville. So we don't want to say there's construction in Charlottesville, go somewhere else. And then if you recall from the SIR presentation, the next thing that we're working on very heavily is trying to steer people to the website. We have a lot of knowledge about the projects, a lot of interest in the projects, but not a lot of people who are going to the website. And that's one of the prominent things on that billboard is that website, so that people know, okay, I can go here and get more information. So that's some of the thinking in the way that the sign was designed, but we can continue to talk with SIR about it.
I'm sure 6 over here and half a dozen over there.
Absolutely.
A lot of things back and forth, but just kind of passing it, heading towards DC, I had to kind of think about, okay, how does this relate? Because I'm so used to seeing a sign here for what's ahead. Like,
And that was a northbound lane sign, billboard, correct?
Yes.
Yeah. You know, we are still looking for opportunities
Yeah.
southbound, but very limited. Actually, there are no opportunities right now for
Right.
billboard southbound. Figured some information was better than none in that scenario.
Lou?
And the billboard design, and Chip, that's certainly a good suggestion, but keep also in mind when you're talking about a billboard, you're talking about something that has to be read about like that when you drive by. So it's a completely different design concept than a lot of the other things that we do. So
Just speaking for myself, one of the things we might find out from the continuing research that SIR talked about that they do, billboards may not be the popular thing. So some of this is VDOT continuing to take information they've gotten from other large projects and building it into how they communicate ongoing construction. Anything else? Morgan? Mark? How you doing?
Hi. Sorry I'm late.
No problem.
Apologize for that.
No problem.
I did have two things. One was a kind of follow-up looking at the minutes from last meeting. Henry had asked me a question. We were talking about the temporary signs, and I was talking about the ordinance the county was doing. A clarification/correction.
Okay.
Henry asked me if it was the ordinance amendment was project-specific.
Yes.
And I said it was. Now, when I answered that, I was saying it was because there's only one project in the county that it could apply to right now. But looking at it, I can see how others could have, and Henry may have meant, could it be used for other projects in the future? And the answer there would be yes. The same ordinance provision would apply if there was another project in the county along a primary arterial highway that required the removal of permanent signs. So.
Okay, yeah, because I didn't understand it that way.
Just a clarification in case anybody, I interpreted his question differently than others might have, so just wanted to talk.
So it's not project specific?
It's not really project specific, except there's only one project in the county.
Currently.
In the county that it would apply to.
Okay.
So just trying to offer.
Okay.
The other thing, update, is when I was here last time, I talked about the county board would be reviewing a business assistance program at the May 6th board meeting. That's now been pushed back to the June 3rd board meeting as a result of feedback they've gotten working with some of the business interests and business community, trying to make sure they incorporate some other things. So that's been pushed back till June.
From May 16th to June 3rd?
May 6th to June 3rd.
Yeah.
I thought I saw that on the agenda.
It's been pushed back. Just confirmed that today.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Mayor? Right? Chris? Okay. All right. Thank you much. This schedule has not changed, although I think I can fairly give them a heads up that these 60% plans are expected, Owen, soon, next week. Week after. In all fairness to these folks, I'm just trying to give them a heads up on maybe you don't know, maybe they.
It'll be earlier in June or late in May.
Okay. But it'll be before June 24th.
There's still,
All right.
everything's on track to meet or beat every schedule you got.
Okay. Just as soon as we have them, we'll do what we did before. We'll strip them out. We'll get them on the website, and we will talk about them collectively as we've agreed to do for the next submittal. So everything else is on track to beat the dates. That's good. Okay. This agenda item 6 will continue to be probably the meatiest part of our meetings going forward as we actually do the project updates. Dave, I've taken your notes and pretty much included them on here, but any expansion that you want to do, or this is your opportunity to ask Dave any more specific questions about the projects themselves. And Henry suggested last time we not make everybody turn around and look at Dave. So
Henry suggested this seat, but I'll stand. And bear with me, I've got a few notes here so that I can make sure I don't miss anything. We'll start with the 29250 interchange project. We have listed here some work that's been occurring this week and will continue to occur through the week. Primarily installation of pipe in the stormwater management basin. If you've driven through there recently in that southwest quadrant, you've seen a lot of activity, some earth moving. Well, now it's time to put in some pipes that lead to those basins, one of which does go beneath the ramp from 29, the loop ramp to eastbound 250. There'll be nighttime lane closure or ramp closure, on that, and there'll be a detour in place to install that pipe. They will continue to clear the vegetation between the Route 29 ramp getting onto the 250 bypass and the Barracks Road exit. I'm sure you've seen the barrier wall up there, a lot of activity going on there, and that'll continue. They expect to finish all of that vegetative removal this week. And also removing the stumps in the median of Route 29, the trees that were removed last week. They're removing all the stumps. They call it clearing and growing, where they get all that vegetative material out of there that might rot. Next week, they plan to remove the topsoil from the Route 29 median. They'll stockpile that topsoil for later use and continue construction of the stormwater management basin. Now, with regard to the yield sign at the end of the ramp, we did get a complaint on that from a motorist who was driving on the 250 bypass and had a vehicle kind of just blast through that yield sign. We don't know the specifics of it. There was no accident. This happened. I'm upset about it. Consider some other configuration. We've gone out and we've talked to our construction field personnel. These are VDOT's oversight people who are out there on a daily basis. We've had our area work zone safety coordinator go out and review the situation again. And collectively, everybody feels that what is there now, a larger yield sign, I think there's 2 yield signs now, one on either side, and actually a stop bar, looks like a stop bar that runs across the end of the ramp, is the appropriate solution. That installation of a stop sign, as recommended by that person who made that comment, would likely create even more problems, especially on 29. So we're going to continue to monitor it. What we've been told is that 90+% of the people who drive through there are doing it correctly, that there's a few people that don't pay attention to the roadway signs, and as a result, there's some issues every now and then. But whether it's a stop sign or a yield sign, those people are going to continue to do what they're doing. So we feel it's the safest approach. We're going to continue to monitor it and make any changes as necessary. So before we move on, does anybody have any questions on this?
I mean, I drive it multiple times a day, and I mean, it's a tough deal. I don't know that there's any easy solution. I don't think a stop sign. Yeah, I completely agree with that, because you're just going to back up and you're going to have rear-end accidents more than others.
Right.
But you've got, at certain times of the day, high volume of traffic coming up the hill, on 250, and it's 2 lanes as you're coming up a ramp with limited sight distance back and no acceleration.
Right.
And the only thought I had was, is it worth considering taking the 2 lanes coming up down to 1, so that this lane has a lane to merge into, so there's no opportunity to.
Which is the scenario that we have when they're actually out there working, where we bring it down to 1 lane, we move everybody over to the left lane, but that's because they need that right lane for the construction activities. Right. That's a good suggestion.
It keeps everybody moving and it takes the conflict away.
Mm-hmm.
Just a thought. Yeah. Because I think you're right, you have to keep that traffic coming up that ramp moving, because it'll back up on the 29, you'll have rear end accidents and all that stuff.
And that's the whole purpose for the project, is because of that congestion on 29. Yeah, we'll look at that. That's a good suggestion. And quite honestly, this is a finding the right balance, making some adjustments, see what the effects are. Sometimes you have to pull it out and start over again, but we're getting closer. What we found is the first 2 or 3 weeks is always a little hairy as far as, are people going to understand what's going on? People seem to have figured out how it operates, and for the most part, everything's going pretty well, but we'll look at that and see if there's a change that we should make there. Thank you.
That suggestion. I'm also wondering, are the only signs posted there now the 2 yield signs away as you get to the merge point?
There's a yield ahead sign
Is
as
there,
well.
say, like a be prepared to stop sign a little bit farther down? Right?
Yeah, about halfway up the ramp, there's a yield ahead sign to let people know that there's a yield condition. Part of the issue, quite honestly, is in Virginia, we put yield signs on our ramps, at the ends of our ramps. Not that that's wrong, it's just that people have gotten used to not paying any attention to that yield sign, whereas this is a much different situation.
Dave, is that something, you said you'd take a look at it, is that something we could expect to bring back in 2 weeks, or is that going to be a?
That's something that I would expect will, if we look at it and find that it's a good idea, we'll probably implement it early next week.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not going to wait on it. We'll start looking at that tomorrow.
All right.
Tomorrow morning.
A lot of traffic does it every day. I mean, there is a high contingent of through traffic that isn't familiar with it and sees it for the first time when they get to the town. So.
Yes.
If you do review it and you reach a decision before the next panel meeting, I'd like to let the panel know what the decision
Absolutely.
is before then.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll get an email to you
Okay.
next week.
Yeah.
If
All
we
right.
make any changes, or even if we don't.
Okay.
And we'll communicate that if there's a new traffic.
Oh, clearly, yeah, yeah, to the public.
I was gonna say, like Pete, I drive that every day, and I'm on the 250 part, and I've noticed the drivers are getting much better about going ahead and moving into that left lane in anticipation of the problem there. So, as you said, they're learning. So some of it's starting to correct itself
Yes.
without anybody doing anything.
Yeah. And that's what we usually see after a couple of weeks. People get used to it. They know what lane to be in. They know they have to yield. There is the through drivers. And that's probably a good portion of that 10% or so that still haven't really figured out what they should be doing.
Do you know how long that particular condition is expected to continue? Will it be like that for pretty much the life of the project? Or
No, I don't think so. I'll need to check with the contractor on this, because this is all part of their construction sequencing, which they're really still working out. They finished the clearing and grubbing on that slope. So they have that barrier wall up there that they were working behind. They were using a lane closure to load trucks. Now, there will still be a situation for the majority of the life of the project where there'll be 2 lanes in a merge situation there, because that ramp just doesn't exist. That barrier wall's there. It's not going to come back out until they're substantially done with that main line. So, but I'll check with the contractor, and we'll get a date for you on that. Any other questions or comments on 29-250? Okay. Next slide. So adaptive signal system, work this week is installation of junction boxes and pulling wire, polo grounds. Last time we told you that upcoming work was doing some directional bores where they bore under the road at polo grounds. That's done. Now they're actually installing junction boxes, pulling wire. And that's a good sign, because that means that's pretty close to completion. They'll also go back and install some loop detectors at Shoals that they weren't able to do recently. Upcoming work is complete the work at Polo Grounds. Again, borings at Woodbrook, same thing. They have to drill under the road and put conduit in so they can pull the wires, so they don't have to tear the road up, and install the loop detectors at Polo Grounds and Woodbrook.
Dave, this is all on, phase 1 is all on track to be finished for June 1.
Yes, well, by June.
By June 1.
Yes, yes. So that it is, thank you for reminding me about that, phase 1 completion in June. So, any questions on the adaptive signals? Okay, next slide. Right-of-way grade separated intersection work this week. Things are really starting to pick up with this. We're still really heavy in the design phase, but we're moving into the utility relocation phase. So at work this week, we did review an advanced work package that was a 90% submittal of water, gas, and sewer relocations. We're finishing that up today, and we're going to be giving some comments back to the design builder on that. They also submitted the final duct bank plan to the utility companies. So this is, the duct bank is basically just a concrete vault that a bunch of utilities run in, generally telecommunications, and that review is done by the utility owners. And completed review of the engineering design traffic data. So this is what we talked about last time, this taking the data that we had before, not developing new data, but implementing that to the specific design of the RIO GSI that Lane Foreman has done. Work next week, we plan to receive additional advanced work package submittals and actually begin the duct bank installation in the northeast quadrant. What we're going to see next week is probably the preliminary, just starting to get things set up, mobilizing equipment, maybe a little clearing and grubbing. I talked about before, that's removal of vegetative material. There's a trash rack that needs to be demolished at some point before they can install the duct bank. But that's going to be the start of actual utility relocations at the RIO GSI project. Any questions on RIO GSI?
Next week.
Yes, sir, Monday. And actually today, CenturyLink started on Dominion Drive on a relocation that they're doing down there, one of their remote switches. Okay, next slide, please. Route 29 widening. Work this week, conducted a utility field investigation. This is a meeting that we had yesterday with the design builder and all the utility owners. Actually a very good meeting. This is an opportunity for everybody to look at what Lane Foreman has come up with as far as conflicts and plans for relocations. And all the utility owners were very happy with what they saw for that specific design, and we're moving forward very quickly with that. Also, all of this week and continuing for, I believe, the next 2 or 3 weeks, there'll be utility test holes. The information we have is that this week there's going to be nighttime lane closures. Those utility test holes will be done in the roadway. After this week, the majority of it's going to be done outside of the roadway, which won't require any lane closures at night. So again, next week, utility test holes, no lane closures required, and we're expecting to receive some advanced work packages pretty soon here, similar to the utility relocation plans that we saw for RIO, to make sure that we agree that they're heading in the right direction with utility relocations. Any questions on Route 29? Okay, next slide, please. Berkmar Extended. We received the Phase 1 Cultural Resources Report. This is actually a memorandum. This is initial findings for cultural resource investigation that they've done. There's a pretty extensive requirement for cultural resources along the Berkmar alignment. We do have some identified sites out there that we're working around, and we had an identified site where they actually have to do what's called a Phase 3 study underneath the bridge near the river. That's kind of a recovery study of artifacts. So that we're seeing the first reports start to come in on that. We had a over-the-shoulder review today at the Lane Foreman's field office. And what this is a cursory review. So they roll out the plans and we go through them together to make sure that they're all on the right track and we don't see any fatal flaws. That review went very well. Things are still very consistent with the technical proposal plans that they submitted as part of their proposal. So we didn't see any issues with that. They are working on geotechnical investigation along that alignment. So this is drilling holes in the ground to see where the rock's at, what the soil looks like, so they recover some soil to test. That's been going on for a while and will continue to happen. That's all outside of roadways, so no lane closures associated with that. And they're conducting some supplemental survey. This is the opportunity for them to go out and pick up any additional survey that VDOT didn't get the first time that they may need, and also spot checking our surveys. Next week, they'll continue the geotechnical investigation, again, no lane closures, and continuing with the supplemental survey. Any questions or comments on Brookmar? Okay, before I turn things over on Hillsdale, there was one thing that I wanted to address, the staking of the easements. We did receive requests to stake easements on 2 parcels. One of them was Colonial Auto. If any property owner wants to have the easement staked so they can see where they're at in the field, they should just contact us and let us know, and we'd be more than happy to go out and stake it for them and be out there to discuss any impacts.
Hey, Dave, before, Chris, before you sit down, give us an update on the establishment of the design builder's office and the co-location of the VDOT.
Okay. VDOT owns a property on Woodburn Road. I may have gone over a little bit of this before. It's very close to the project site, the Ohio GSI project site. It's about a mile if you drive it. It's probably substantially less than that as the crow flies. They have set up 2 trailer compounds, which consist of 5 trailers put together to create an office space. There's one for the design builder, and there's one for VDOT personnel. We've not moved in yet. They're still getting the final touches put on it. Like, I think they're running off a generator now, so they'll next week be on power, installation of water lines, sewer, and telecommunications. So I think a week from Monday, VDOT's planning to go ahead and start moving into that facility. And we actually had our first meeting at the co-location office in Lane Corman's trailer today. So it's good to be right there on site. That way we can be very responsive to anything that comes up during construction. So.
And who will be there from VDOT?
There will be, at a minimum, 8 full-time VDOT employees working out of that office, and we have
one of them you.
One of them is me. Yes, that's my new home, actually. So I'll be working there full-time. Some of you may have met Hal Jones. He'll be working there full-time. Lou will be there full-time, and a few other people. Joel will come join us periodically for meetings and things like that.
When you guys done that?
We'll have about 16 people total working in that office, 8 full-time, 2 to 3 days a week. Any other questions on any of the projects?
This residual bypass property.
It is. It is property that was previously owned by Faulkner Construction. We had leased that to Faulkner. They have subleased it to Lincoln. At their choice. They chose to continue that lease. So having it all back.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Chris?
Quick update on Hillsdale. Work continues primarily behind the scenes with the engineers and folks working on right-of-way acquisition. They finalized comments back on the environmental reevaluation. Should be coming back to VDOT if it hasn't already. Some updates to the website are continuing, as well as stakeholder committee. Geotechnical borings are being planned for the bridge section. I'm not sure the date on that, but they're looking to schedule those. And then upcoming work includes a response to VDOT on revised traffic and signal warrant analysis, scheduling stormwater management meeting with the VDOT and county, and starting the appraisal process on some selected parcels.
Okay. In this case, the environmental reevaluation is the city's reevaluation of a previously approved environmental document. Is that?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure that's it, right? The environmental process, you go through it, you have an approved document. If construction doesn't, well, if the next phase doesn't advance within 3 years, there's a standard process going back and just reevaluating it, which is a process of saying, well, what did we say conditions were when we did our original document, and documenting that they're either the same, or if they've changed, documenting any changes. And that's a process that the city would go through on VDOT's behalf.
Chris, can I ask a question? And this is about McIntyre, but since it's the city, you'd be the person to ask. There were some substantial bonuses set up for completion dates in December for the contractor. And with Jim not here, were those paid? Because it didn't look substantially complete when they were striping and had lanes closed yesterday.
And they're still there, they're still working. So
Right.
I don't know if it has to fully complete before they get those or.
And I asked that just to better understand what substantially complete means in this.
Substantial completion is usually, it is just that, it's, a project is substantially complete, and usually what the situation is the owner wants to go out, check everything, and make sure that all the final, we call it punch list, that all those items are addressed. That's final completion, where we close the project, or the contract payment, and they've reached final completion. Usually there's not a significant amount of time between substantial completion and final completion, usually 2 to 4 weeks. But if there's major pay items that aren't completed, usually that's not substantial.
Like striping or asphalt?
Depends on the situation.
I really
And I
need
don't
to
know.
see the contract.
Right, well,
Yeah.
I'm asking that of
Yeah.
this contract, because there's a 24-hour period where it goes from 0 to 9 million, and, in terms of bonus, and
We've been much more, we've.
Well,
you've got it nailed down where if there's a line of painting missing, it's not being
Yes.
paid.
Yes.
Yeah, we've got it nailed down. Would you like us to
No,
look back on McIntyre?
Well, yeah, it'd be great to know if that was, if those were paid out. I think that the taxpayers would want to know.
Okay.
I mean, I didn't feel like it was complete by December. If that was the case, I'm sorry to ask a question we don't know.
Okay. Okay.
By December of last year?
I remember Jim sharing information about there were incentives.
I'd ask them. Let's don't guess. Let's don't guess.
Yeah,
We'll go back and
It would
look.
just be great to know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
I think there are provisions in the design-build contract that are pretty specific about what substantial completion means for the Ohio project. Probably find those and shed some light on.
We'll review this with you. Yes, I recall.
We
There was a-
don't even use the term substantial completion. We have milestone completion.
Yeah.
So there's no confusion about it, because there are certain items that, when it's open back up to traffic, that's how we define that milestone. Now, there's still items that need to be done. There may be temporary striping done, and we've allowed that, and we've provided 2 months, I believe it was 2 months, to complete that work at final completion. So when we open it back up to traffic, that's a milestone completion, rather than a substantial completion.
Okay. Any other questions on any of the project updates? Dave, thank you. Chris, thank you very much. All right. Agenda item 7 is follow back up on the signing plans. The draft signing plans have been submitted. They do include interim place names from SIR's report. And I'll tell you why they do. Because I don't want to start off with plans that say Route 29 and Ryle Road. So we have used the interim place names for the quadrants or the corners. The local way, that you'll see, the local wayfinding sign color options are the traditional green background with white letters, or a blue background with white letters. Colors other than blue could be considered. I'll tell you that some folks are all in favor of them all being green and white. I don't mind telling you that I'm not, but we'll have to reach that decision. The draft signing plan is that what's shown on that large sheet in the back. This is the draft permanent signing plan. It's also been posted at this link, which again, for anyone watching, if you want to go to that Learn More tab on the website and go to the Rio Road intersection menu, you'll see under Documents the draft signing plan. Just as a reminder, the draft signing plan is not the construction signing plan. The maintenance of traffic construction signing plan is posted under the Rio Road tab that we just mentioned, but it is different. It's that traffic management plan or maintenance of traffic plan tab. So this is what we're going to take a look at a bit. The overhead sign boards, these would be the and we'll see the location of these. The overhead signs as you're driving into the intersection would have the sign for the through lanes, as well as a sign for the intersection for Rio Road. That was the northbound sign. The southbound sign, the through lane would be southbound, notice to Charlottesville. This is the same sign for the local lanes at Rio Road. These are the signs that I mentioned that in the interim are using the names from SRI's report. We're using the term on these, again, these are just draft, for the corners. So northbound, there would be a sign beyond the intersection on the local lane. So this, where the others were overhead signs, these would be ground-mounted signs for library, the Rio Road corners, Library, Rio Hill, which would be the left, Fashion Square, and Albemarle Square. The same names here, just reversed for southbound to get the directions right. If you look, this is an example of how they could look in, as you all know, I'm not great with colors, but is that blue? Is that bluish, I guess? Like a Todd's color sign. So it would be a different color for the ground-mounted signs on the local lanes at the corner itself. Go back a couple of slides. Well, no, that's fine. Go forward. Go forward. That's fine. That's fine. We looked at the northbound overhead sign and the corner signs. This gives a little better idea of where they would be located. Dave, make sure I don't get anything wrong here. This is currently the main entrance, or the southernmost entrance to Fashion Square.
It's the northern entrance on 29. Now this is
northern entrance.
There's one further south. There's two off of 29 going into Fashion Square. That's the one further to the north.
Yeah.
If we're driving,
You're looking northbound.
Right. We're looking northbound. Right. There's one down here.
Yes.
Yeah. This is the intersection that would come out. The bifurcated or the through lanes would start generally in this area. Before you got to that, there'd be an overhead sign for the through lanes, 29 North, local lanes, Rio Road. In this vicinity, on the local lanes, signing for Rio Road, there would be a sign with something on it. The example here is sign for the Rio Road corners, Library corner, Rio Hill, next left, right? You go up to the intersection, take a left, or Fashion Square and Albemarle Square, stay to the right. In this particular case, that sign would be for this entrance to Fashion Square and Albemarle Square. And I think we still have to talk about that conversation you and I had, Dave, that this would be the right end to Fashion Square, or if someone chose for some reason on the through lane, the local lanes, you could cross the intersection and take a right in from the local lane on Avalon Square. Again, these are just draft, they're examples of sign placement and what might be on a sign legend. The next page in your handout is exactly the same thing from the other direction, from the south. Pete, you're saying no, it's not?
No, I'm just shaking my head. This is the first I've seen.
Oh, well, yeah, this would be the first. In this particular case, we're southbound, so this is Albemarle Square. And again, in terms of just context, the bifurcation or the change in grade from the through lanes to the local lanes would be about here, this intersection.
A little further south.
Okay.
Well, this intersection comes out, Dave.
Yes.
Yeah, this intersection comes
Kind of on
out.
the south side of that intersection is where
Which is where it starts, right, it's where it starts, here. But the overhead sign would be the same, south 29 for the through lanes, sign for the local lanes at Rye Road, and then the appropriate sign for either side of Rye Road.
But, excuse me one second. These signs look closer to the intersection than the northbound approach. Is the grade different coming south than north?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
So it's steeper going southbound than it is northbound.
Right.
So that's why it's all based on the location of the retaining walls for the depressed lanes. So on the north side of the intersection, it's a little shorter on the south side.
Does that answer that for you, Pete?
Yeah, I mean, as we've gone through this process, I'm going to call it the top has been shortened.
The top has been shortened.
On a couple of occasions.
The lid.
It looks like the lid, or the grade has been shortened on the north side in terms of the effect of the, and I don't know why it wasn't shortened on the south side. Or
It was, just not as much.
Just not as much
is it
to
existing
meet this
topography
grade.
that led to that? I mean, I think it's steeper on the north side, coming south. So maybe that was the dynamic. Okay.
Now, Dave, I want to talk about this sign a little bit. As far as I'm concerned, till we learn otherwise, it's still up for grabs as to whether or not this overhead sign for the local lanes could be a different color, should there be a choice to make this sign some other. In other words, if the ground mounted signs for the local intersection happen to be a different color, and we have an opportunity to match that with this local sign, local overhead sign, I think we should consider that opportunity. If the rule book says no way, that really and truly isn't possible, then that will, but I'm not sure that's what it says. So we'll consider to keep that on the table.
What are the mounting heights of I don't know the name.
The overhead sign.
Yeah. Well,
The mounting
standard
height.
clearance to the bottom of any structure is
16
feet, 6 inches.
16 feet to the
16
To the bottom.
16
16 to
6.
the bottom and to the top.
Well, that's determined by the height of the sign,
Okay.
how tall the sign is. So if it's,
What do you expect?
What's the standard? Owen, what's this based on?
5 feet, maybe?
Sorry?
about 5 feet,
That height,
Yeah.
how tall the sign
it
is.
depends on how much message you're putting on there.
Well, let's say it
Those would
says-
be like about 5 feet tall.
Are they lit?
Yeah, actually, you could get a good example of what their size as the
South.
new ones that were put up north of Hydraulic.
Right.
They're not going to be too different than that.
They would be lit from the top, wouldn't they?
Well, that's all.
Or is that all?
The lighting analysis to determine
Okay.
whether they need to be lit.
Okay. Okay. All right, all right.
Taking comments yet?
Well, yeah, we can. Yeah, absolutely.
No,
Yeah,
I like
absolutely.
your idea, if possible, the differing colors on the local lanes. I would like to see too, if possible, and I know the wording's wouldn't be exact, but a wording, if the same local sign that's up at the top, if there were a way to put it, to have a second one before you get to the overhead signs, so that you aren't caught in the left lane trying to get back in to the right. Am I explaining that?
Well,
Further here,
yes.
further here,
Further, yes, yes.
before you get to those.
Before you get to that, but keeping the other one.
Yeah, we have talked about that.
Okay.
And we'll continue to talk about that. It's not off the table. But there's some good reasons why we haven't included it yet. The two primary ones are, one, just simply the number of signs out there. If you look at this over here, there's a lot of signs that are out there now. There's going to be a lot of signs out there in the future.
That one doesn't even show all the signs that are out there now, right? No, it shows, that board shows all the signs that will be there
Yes.
after construction.
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't want to use the term sign pollution, but the other thing is the confusion of how much information is being thrown at you. We really talked about, we could put a lot of signs out there, but how much can you really take in? And we thought that a simpler approach might be a better approach for numerous reasons. The other is, if we put I'll call them the local signs, the corners signs, in advance of the overhead signs, it might create even more confusion. The overhead signs will be visible from several hundred feet before you get to the sign location. That's what tells you, I'm going through toward Charlottesville, I need to be in these left lanes. I'm local traffic, I want to go to Riley Road or one of the businesses right in that area, I need to be in these two right lanes. That's what those arrows are really directing people toward. But we'll continue to look at that.
I wonder, we touched on this before, but if it's an additional sign isn't the answer, if some kind of pavement marking
Yes.
earlier might help,
We
rural and local.
We do have, in fact, if you look at our plan here, we do have pavement markings that are associated with the Charlottesville and the local, the through and the local lanes. Each lane would have a pavement marking that was designated as a through or a local lane. Yes.
But even before you get to the point where they split,
Yes,
is my point.
before that.
And we'll talk about something else on the next page too. I think these are all good thoughts. I think the people that are going to know the best are in the businesses.
Yes.
I mean, we kind of know what, we think we know certain things. As far as what the rule book says, that we can ferret out. I mean, we can't put something up here the Federal Highway Administration says you can't do, or that the VDOT says you can't do. But I think Chip's comment is a pretty darn good one to continue to consider. And I see where you're coming from there. I think any opportunity to help sign for these businesses in this area is any reasonable opportunity that the state should do is good. And I see the point Morgan is making. We have talked about that differentiation as well. So these are all good thoughts that we need to capture, and then we'll carry this thought over into the next agenda item, so I won't rush it.
And I would just say, and it's something that our subcommittee will consider too, is that if you can create an identifying, in this case, color, maybe working with the county, there could be an opportunity to do an off-premise sign that could pick up the same color and theme, so that you aren't polluting the right-of-way signs, but creating a sign that the traveling public can read and will help direct them where to go.
Well, our concern isn't how many signs are in our right of way,
Right.
quite honestly.
Right.
It's how do we convey our message best? And we have not made any decisions as far as, no, we're not going to put that sign up. It's just, we chose at this point not to show it, and if that's something
Well,
that.
What we have right now is a pretty traditional approach to signing. So the question will be, do we, this panel, want to recommend nothing? Do we want to recommend a traditional approach, or do we want to recommend something that might create a little uneasiness for some people, a little interest for others? I don't mean to point to you, but no.
But he did.
No, I know.
Two thoughts here building on this. The corner signs, if we treat them as wayfinding, first of all, that opens up a whole option of how we do things differently than a traditional highway sign. The other thing is,
Yeah, you're right.
do we incorporate that into a bigger theme regionally, or does the county take that and build off of it? And do we introduce a sign in advance of the overhead signs that defines wayfinding symbols and colors and places? So I think there's a lot of options here for us to talk about in finding what the right.
If you'll remember, and the only reason I remember, just because I went back and looked this morning, we saw examples of other signs that had the green background with white letters, but incorporated a color symbol beside the term that could be coordinated with here. So there's a lot of things we can do. You have these are part of the presentation, have been posted. Let's go ahead and go to the next one, because these two areas tie together. The last time we met, we looked at these steps that we said we would go through in this place naming exercise. And the item 1 was the report we got back from SIR. Item 2, which came out of April 16th, was that we needed to inventory and understand existing and future plans from the county and the city. And I asked you, the panel, for input, and specifically the city and county. And let's review some of that input, because it is important. It's the next slide. Okay. Replies included, and I would say the very first couple of replies was the county is planning the small area plan process, and that process ought to be used to select the permanent names. My own personal opinion is that a process that involves the public and the businesses should be used to select the permanent names. If it's a process that's going to happen a year from now, then I would be concerned about it. I would be concerned about that. I think that if you end up, we have an opportunity through the Virginia Department of Transportation, as part of the funds that have been assembled for this project, to do something with these signs that can either be green and white Rio Road or something else. And if they're going to be something else, we're going to have to figure out collectively how to work toward that. So that's the only thing that I would like to keep us, or suggest we keep in balance with the county. If it can work through the small area plan process, then that's great. If not, then we still need to have some process, like we talked about 2 meetings ago, that involves the public and involves the public and the businesses in that area. Chris had told us this before, but he confirmed that the city of Charlottesville does have an area that they refer to as Midtown now, the West Main Street area between the corner and the downtown mall. One of the comments was that, picking a name for the quadrants, whatever you call them, could be challenging, and I would agree with that. Go ahead, Linda. A couple of you did did suggest some possible names for the area in general. Rio Corners, the Rio District, Rio Business District, Midtown Albemarle, Albemarle Hub District. These are just things that came back from panel members. And to be honest with you, I can't remember when panel members copied everybody or just sent a note back to me. But these were 5 things that were suggested for the general intersection area. On the next slide, these were suggested as some identifiers for the quadrants. One suggested just colors, blue, red, green, yellow, or the directional, northwest, southwest, northeast, southeast, or in terms of names, Madison, Jefferson, Monroe, and Lewis, and Clark. I'll be very candid. I wanted to make sure that we had something on those signs for this draft signing plan, and the decision was just pick what we had out of SIR. That's something most of you had seen before. The what is the specific name is something that does need to come through some kind of a process. Let's just see something. Linda, would you go back to slide 21? One more back. I'm sorry, one more back. The next thing we would try to do, based on what we talked about last meeting, would be to create straw man names of naming schemes to test. And I think that's something we need to just discuss back with the county for sure before we take that step. And I know there's some disagreement there over whether or not we should be selecting the names. We won't be selecting them. We have an opportunity to make a recommendation, and I just would hate to see us miss that window. What is the window, Dave?
Well, for permanents,
for in terms of actually having a legend to put for somebody to plop on a sign that has to be fabricated, what is that window?
it's hard to define right now because a lot of that has to do with the completion date of the project. And counting back, I would think we would probably want to allow 6 months from the time that sign needs to be installed for everybody to do reviews, to order it, to get it in, to install it, so that when it's ready to open that to traffic, everything's up there. Everybody, it's been vetted through everybody. So I would think by February of next year, we would want to have that nailed down.
I think it's important to know in talking with the county in terms of how it might fit within the small area planning process.
And I was going to say, that helps a lot, because I can take that back and say, can we agree on a process that comes up with the place naming? The place naming doesn't have to wait for completion of the plan. As a matter of fact, there's advantages to have the place name at the start of the plan, so that everybody, it starts to take an identity. So that helps me.
So for shooting purposes, February 25th, no, this is 2016.
And the way I work, I would automatically back that off a month, say January 2016.
I'm already in December.
You've already backed it off another month.
So we could have the rest of this year to work on.
Right.
2 questions. One, without nailing you down to a nickel, I mean, what kind of investment are we talking about missing the opportunity on? I mean, because I know it's substantial in terms of, if the county were to go through a small area plan, come up with a knockdown, great idea, and want to re-sign this area, what kind of cost would that kind of thing entail? I mean, hundreds of thousands, a couple $100,000.
I got a number in my head, see what your number.
It is. A little hesitant to put a number to it, but,
Well-
I mean, depending on,
Again, I'm just trying to
I-
ballpark.
I'm gonna say 250 on the low end, 500,000 on a high end. Oh,
So-
is that right, wrong? Is that in?
I just want to put
Is that a
number
reasonable
to
range?
the urgency, I mean,
Yeah.
to the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, it goes way beyond the signs.
I mean, you have
There's a
to-
study, there's reports, you know, and
Well, yeah, I'm just thinking in terms of we had a sign up that said Ryle Road, and now we want to come back and put a sign up that says Ryle Road, and change the legend. You have to, the design of the sign won't be that difficult, but it has to be fabricated, right? It has to be fabricated, and signs have to come down, and signs have to be erected, you have to have equipment. I mean, I may be low.
So just take the low side and say it's $250,000.
Yeah, it's at
enough
least
to
that.
make us, you know,
I will say on those overhead signs, the important thing is if we start changing the sign size, that's a wind load. And
That's
if you
right.
haven't designed
That's right.
that truss
Yeah.
for a larger sign, you're in real trouble and you're going back to square one. And
That would be a biggie. That would be a biggie. But I think it's,
so it would probably be prohibitive that we would come back and change this signage once the small area plan is nailed down because of the cost.
I don't know how VDOT would view it at the time,
Right.
but I would not be surprised if someone at VDOT said, that's a great idea, we're happy to do it, this is a check you need to write for us to go back.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's, in addition to financial costs, there's just the cost of the public getting used to one naming
Yeah,
mechanism
yeah.
as they're trying to navigate this
Yeah.
corridor, and then all of a sudden pulling the rug out, saying, I know what it is now.
And Mark, I'm not trying to get us at odds with the small area planning
No, I
process.
understand. Yeah, that's why the timeline's important.
Yeah.
I think,
We know what we're looking for.
the follow-up question I had was, does it have to be an all or nothing? I mean, if we just named the area, you know, to name the small area,
Yeah.
and incorporated that aspect into the signage, and not have every quadrant.
Yeah.
We don't have to do it all, but let's
Right.
get as much as we can reasonably.
Right.
Yeah, I don't,
you may be talking about a scenario there where we have our overhead signs nailed down for the future, indefinite future, and then we're looking at the wayfind,
yeah.
and that is probably a significantly less cost.
So there's a way to kind of get a little bit of,
Yeah, it could be. It could be, absolutely. Just remember, the wayfinding fines, now we don't have the big overhead structure that you decide you want to sign that's a third yet higher that affects the design of that structure. So it does not have to be all or nothing.
Almost feel like this is one of those things where you get your dog tag made, and how many spaces do we get for that?
It's an interesting discussion and just a heck of an opportunity.
But I'm with Mark, what he commented. I don't see why even with the small area plan, the very first thing to accomplish is the naming.
That's correct.
And if you do that smartly, I mean, you know, and I'm just picking, if the small area plan totally kind of changed and said, hey, you should include housing here, so you have more mixed use than just business use. If you think strategically, you name it so that would accommodate everything. Get that out of the way in the first few months, then the whole land use and all that other stuff can come later.
That's
And it
right.
doesn't affect anything that we're looking at.
Your budget cycle would be July 1?
Yeah, we're already.
You're doing your budget.
We're anticipating the board appropriating the money for
Uh-huh.
FY16 next week.
Okay.
And then we're already trying to work on
Okay.
a proposal.
All right.
We're going to move forward.
Okay. Okay.
If we could go back to slide 20.
Slide 20?
One other thing I was thinking about, let's get back to Chip's point and whether we could, referring to the top sign there as a wayfinding sign.
Yeah.
I completely understand the point about not having an additional wayfinding sign going further north or at the bottom. But another idea I was thinking is maybe you could have almost panels under the first kind the main sign there, the local name sign, that has the names of the four corners on it. So the sign says local 29 to 631 Rydell Road. Perhaps underneath it could just be a small panel, library, Bridal Hill.
Underneath the overhead sign?
Right. So instead of having an additional one further.
Well, we're not opposed to having that additional sign that
Yeah.
defines the destination, so to speak, for the wayfinding system. In fact, I think that would be the appropriate thing to do.
I think it would be
On the overhead sign?
not
Either
on the overhead sign.
sign or on a ground mounted sign, really would be probably the.
I think Morgan's right. I mean, I think that's going to be the major one, and then everything subsequent to that will reinforce it. But when you see Ryan Road, if you had a listing, either kind of like airports do with the different,
Yeah.
different airlines, you want to have the list.
And that's what we saw we saw an example of a sign like that actually had 3 district names on it. I don't remember what they were, but it had a color box and it said District A and a color box, District B, District C. That's one of the examples that we saw from Nathan.
And the one thing, if we do it on the overhead.
Now
Go ahead.
if the decision leads us down that path, that's real important for design, because now, if we do change, we get into the size of these signs, does affect your design for the overhead.
Well, I think what would be the most appropriate thing is to actually, instead of having a sign below, have a separate sign beside it. Limits the height of your sign.
So this, right?
And maybe it's not quite as large.
But, and then you design it, I mean, let's say we're not ready, but maybe we design the truss so it's got the wind load for that to be put in.
That you can do.
I mean, that's pretty easy.
I'm just thinking that avoids the concern with Chip's suggestion if you don't add another ground sign that's going to be completely overlooked because it's too much information. You're putting it at the relevant spot. People are going to be saying, oh, local lanes, while they're looking at it, they'll get the little cues. Oh, okay, that's where I need to go to get to Albemarle Square.
I don't think those are mutually exclusive for consideration no more. Doing this and having an additional round. I don't believe they're mutually exclusive.
I do think the location might be not ideal for the mounting of the sign.
The overhead sign or the?
Most of the traffic that's coming that way south is they're shopping vehicles as they go, so they might not be paying attention to the road sign.
That is
true.
So we got to dim your lights a little?
Well, they're busy looking at these cars over there.
You wouldn't want to compete with that, so.
Maybe we could have sponsorships.
Mount half of a car.
Yeah. All the arrows will be cars. It'll be more. Okay, this is a good discussion. One we'll consider. Mark, maybe I'll give you a shout next week, and
that's fine. Yeah.
And we'll talk a little bit more about process, because I don't want to be interfering with it.
No,
but I don't mind.
This is fine. This is fine. You know, the place naming can be. It's actually when we did Places 29, it was a great way to initiate the process and to get people thinking together about solutions.
All right.
Before we got into the more complex problems.
Okay. Very good. Very good. Any more on this for now? Okay. I think slide 25 is our calendar, and I just put this together from the feedback I got from most of you. The one option was no meeting in July, and even though everybody was okay with that, everybody that wrote back said, you know, the preference was not to let a month go without any meeting. And if you remember, or maybe I said or didn't, I'm going to be gone a couple weeks in July, and a couple weeks in July. So July the 16th, and then I have been starting on August the 6th, and the same rhythm, and went ahead and carried that out, next slide, through 2016 to get us to the end of June. it's a lot of meetings, it's a big commitment of time. I think we need to continue to work to be as efficient as we can, but a lot of things are going to be happening. I mean, a lot of things are going to be happening on the basis we can always not have a meeting if that's the case. The other thing I would like to see us do as these projects move more into construction, to the extent that we can keep them live streamed, that's fine. But I'd also like to see us have some meetings some organized meetings where we go see work that's going on. Whether that's using the new library as a base for a meeting or two, or putting together some tours, being able to see the work really helps put it in context in terms of comments you have on the work. Of the people I heard back from, the preference was to continue bi-weekly so that we didn't miss something. So this is just I mean, you can look at these dates, let me know what you think, you can adjust them, whatever, but I think it's important to get something on the calendar. If you can do that over the next couple of weeks, that would be good.
Can you send us an email with these dates?
Pardon me?
You send an email with these dates?
I'll email you the dates. Yes, I will. You don't have them yet, but I'll email them to you. I think we mentioned this once before, but I can't remember the response. Is it possible that we could have a meeting at the office site?
It is. We have a fairly large conference room, a couple of fairly large conference rooms. We could do that. We wouldn't be able to.
Yeah, I know. That's the trade-off, but so that might be a location that we could have it. Does the library have?
Yes.
The library has capabilities, right? Okay. All right. Okay. New business. Pete?
The only thing, I'll just ask again, we looked at the 30% drawings and the stacking capacity at the left turn at Woodbrook. Is that still, we're still going to have to see that in the 60% drawings?
Yes.
Because it's just not, I looked up there, it's not there, and I don't know where that is, 60 or 30 or whatever.
That's
60.
The signing plan was.
Oh, no problem, I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
Well,
so
essentially they took and put the signs on, effectively was the 30% plan. So yes, that'll be available.
No problem.
Anything else?
That's all I got.
Okay. Chip? Morgan? Mark? Mayor? Okay. VDOT? Allison? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. We'll adjourn and see you here in a couple of weeks. And thank you very much.